I'm super excited to bring to you the AIA Austin Homes Tour for 2025. It's on the weekend of the 25th and the 26th of October. If you're coming to Austin or you live in Austin and you love architecture, this is a tour you shouldn't miss. Now, if you want to listen to this series on the podcast or watch it on YouTube, please do, and understand that I have each of the architects presenting the homes that they have on the tour this year. So there's 10 architects, plus I have Rob Gomez and Ingrid Spencer, who are also commenting on these homes. Now, Rob has photographed every one of them, and Ingrid is the director of the AIA Austin. These two are super knowledgeable and add really beautiful insight to what these homes are about from observers who aren't architects. So please tune in, listen, ask comments, and book a ticket and come on tour and see each of these homes over the weekend, 25th, 26th of October 2025. Look forward to seeing you there. I want to introduce you to Hugh Jefferson Randolph. Now, Hugh and I go back, way back, many years, and this is the 13th home that he has had on the AIA Austin, Texas Homes Tour. And over that time, it's been a 30-year span that he has been showing houses on this tour. He's one of the most, I don't know what you'd say, you're awarded architect, but one of the most prolific showers of homes on the tour. And what it says about Hugh is that the diversity of the design that he produces always brings something new. It's always a constantly moving thing. So we're going to look at Valburn House, and this is a new build. It's in, well, I'm going to let Hugh explain exactly where it is, but it's got amazing outlooks, amazing home. So Hugh, a little bit of a backstory. Who are you? What's the studio? And then we'll go from there into the brief of the house.
Okay, well, Adrian, thank you very much. It's always great to connect, and in this case, reconnect. You know, I've met you many times in person, and actually, second podcast, the first one being recorded, so
the second one of these.
But I was thinking that when you're trying to articulate, and I think that some things I always take it as a compliment when people try to say, well, what style do you do? How do you categorize? And I think that if nothing else, just sort of saying, hard to categorize, I take as a compliment as opposed to, sometimes that's not always a compliment. But in any case, so I've been here in Austin now for 34 years and obviously love it here. If I didn't, I hopefully would have the wherewithal, the smarts to move. But no, I love Austin. I think that for a lot of reasons I can start to go into, but it is such a diverse, eclectic place in regards to lots of things in terms of the people and the different philosophies. There's no one main culture here. And I think that's really key because you have people who are Texans and all the stereotypes, the Old West kind of, and then you have the tech entrepreneur, the tech bros and so forth. And then you've got, like any city, you have the people who kind of grew up here in just the old line, society or something, but it's not nearly as dominant, say, as some other cities, which I think is refreshing. But you have people moving here from other places, and they bring their own culture, their own personalities. And then the other thing, particularly about Austin, is that the geography is you could drive 5 miles in one direction, and you see rocky cliffs and deer and cactus, and you can drive 5 miles in the other direction, and it's flat and green and it's where these two different ecosystems meet, not to get too into all of that, but in terms of just, you have all these kind of things colliding isn't really the great thing. But the catalyst,
together around the lake.
It sparks something new and different. And so I guess that's one reason, in a sense, why our work, is so varied, because we really look at it is that there is the client brings something, obviously, their functional requirements, their goals, their personalities. And then something which is much more hard to articulate is like, what's the essence of who they are as people, and how is that reflected? To what extent is it reflected in the architecture? But also, I think that there's a site, the location, is it the physical aspects, where the sun rises and sets? Is it, a lot of our projects are on, sloped sites, and how do you work with the hillside, which is, it gives you a lot of inspiration for doing something different when you have a unique, challenging lot. A little bit like the Valburn house, but also I think also what we bring to the table. And we, as architects, look at it that you want to solve, obviously, you want to solve the functional problem. That goes without saying. What's a certain level of competency just to achieve, okay, this works, the roof doesn't leak, it meets all the spatial requirements, the lifestyle requirements. But then we begin to think, we have this kind of phrase we start to use, well, then what? Because I think that it's our place, it's our responsibility to take the project, not at the compromise of any of the other kind of functional goals, but to rise above and beyond simply solving those goals. And we'll talk more about that. But I think that again, it's great to be on another chat here. And we love doing residential work. And we've had a great studio. And it's not. I also want to kind of say right up off the bat is we have a team of people. So, I've wanted to be an architect since I was like 7 or 8 years old, and I love designing, and I'm kind of the lead in terms of the design aspect, and interacting with the clients. I love that. But also we have a great team of people that I can't do what I do, and couldn't do what I do, without a team. So I just want to kind of give recognition to everybody else.
All the engine power and all the horsepower that goes into what it really takes. It's not just drawing one pretty picture and having a great idea. That's where the problem starts, and then from there it gets solved from that point forward with a lot of input, a lot of right expertise. So with that, and I've seen your work so often and been inside your work, and I think that's another thing. There's one thing seeing somebody's work, whether it be in a photograph, or there's another thing experiencing it in person and actually feeling it emotionally. And the emotions that everybody gets from different work is driven by what the emotion you're leaving behind for your client and what the emotion of the site is going to bring to it. And I totally get that with going into the homes that I've been in with you. There's always these plays. There's always these I want to say surprises. They're not really surprises. They're adventures. You move through these homes in adventures, and you will get drawn down the path by the way that you put the program together, the way that it falls together. It draws you into different parts of it. In the Valburn house, tell us about the brief and what the client was asking for, because it's a tricky site. It's like you said, you've got some steep sites, and this is a tricky site. So tell us about that, and then we'll go to showing some pictures, and you can take us through those pictures of the home.
Yeah, no, the wonderful client, and all clients in their own way, we really want to kind of get to engage with them. Like I mentioned, so it takes it above and beyond just, how big is the room and so forth, trying to find the essence of sort of who they are and, whether it's just one client or whether it's, a couple. So this client, Alan, he had reached out and said, I've seen some of your work and so forth, sort of a typical beginning of the conversation. And he said, well, this might sound like a really strange request. And he paused and he said, I lived in New York City for X number of years. He originally grew up in Oregon, and his family, he was born there, but his family was from Korea. So he had a really kind of interesting mix of living in the Pacific Northwest and then having the Korean heritage, and then also living in New York. He also had an interesting educational background. He had studied undergraduate, I think, in business, and then he had gone to law school and learned, I guess what he learned was a lot of things in law school, but also he did not want to practice law. So then he studied up at Pratt Institute up in Brooklyn, interior design. And so he had a real handle on many different things. Again, that kind of eclectic mix of different experiences that he had within himself, right? But he asked for New York City architectural urban typologies. And I got all excited because, in architecture school, we were studying, there's different architects and theorists back especially in the 70s, 80s, Aldo Rossi and different people who talked about, the building typology and so forth. And what those things mean and kind of what's the essence of these different types, a warehouse or a loft, or it could be that it's a cathedral or different buildings, and they have a certain kind of essence to, if you distill it down, that is unique to that building type. And how you can, a lot of historical buildings over time, some of the best buildings were really just a reinterpretation of those basic archetypes and so forth. So anyway, I was very excited when he says, I wanted to be, like, and he says, now this might sound like it's going to be like a real hodgepodge or something, a high-rise penthouse apartment,
Yeah.
a urban loft, like a Tribeca loft, and then even like a brownstone and like in Brooklyn or Harlem or urban brownstone, and then even an alleyway. When he said alleyway, because that was the essence of a city, I think, isn't there's infrastructure, there's bridges, there's alleys, and that's really what gives that, I think, the personality beyond just as individual pieces. So we had a great conversation, and he says, oh, and by the way, I kind of like where I'm living now, but the garage isn't big enough because I have, I need a larger garage. And I said, well, how many cars do you have? And he paused on the phone and said, well, I see 7 or 8. Well, so really, it's a fluid number. So he's a car collector. And over the course of the project, I appreciated that. At first, I was envisioning, wow, we get to do like the glass Ferris Bueller's Friend's dad's garage or something, make it a real focus, have a glass floor, looking at the cars on display. But what I really came to appreciate was, no, he wanted it to be a nice space, but it wasn't going to, and no pun intended, it wasn't going to drive the rest of the design, for how the house was. There's just one more component in the house. And so again, it was that interesting mix of functional, programmatic, but also having that architectural. It's pretty unique for a client to come to us with a layer of architectural philosophy and so forth. And so that was really interesting. And I appreciated and respected that he, having been trained in the design world, knew what he knew and wanted to respect a professional's opinion. So he wasn't trying to grab the pencil from us and dictate every little thing, but he was very communicative about what he wanted, but in a way that gave a space for ourselves and for the interior designer to kind of like bring what we do, bring what he considered the value to the process, and not telling us exactly how it's going to be manifested, but he was giving us his goals.
Yeah.
And I think it's important when a client can give a goal, and they don't have to give the solution. They can offer solutions, but it's a back and forth conversation. One person says one thing, they say another, we react to it's and it sounds very cliche, but we couldn't do what we would do in a vacuum. Yeah. And we certainly hope, we've had clients later will thank us like, oh, I would never have thought of this on my own. It's like, well,
that's where you bring your value.
Because like, why would you need to hire an interior designer or an architect or anyone else if they could do it all, then, but again, having that sort of openness to be inspired by a client and also to inspire the client into a experience that was above and beyond what they were initially asking for, I think is also what we tried to do in every project. Again, with respect to pragmatics of timeline, budget, and everything else, because you can't just, it's not our plaything,
Yes.
Yes. But again, we like clients where they're open to, starting in a spot, and we can talk more about the particulars of the house. But I think the process in this project is a really good, almost like a case study in a sense for how we like to sort of, what is the structure of the process? How is it kind of rigorous? And where do you design a process and a communication style that allows for sort of the serendipity for things to happen that you wouldn't expect? And by nature, you can't predict what they're going to be, but you have to be open. You have to be open to letting the project kind of flourish, again, above and beyond simply being pragmatic, but also you can't do that at the expense of pragmatism. So it's a balance between those two, I guess, the poetic and the prosaic.
Yes,
but
it's a really good way.
It's a project we're very proud of. And
I was just going to say it's a really good way of putting that. You need both of those energies in the project to get something truly special. Otherwise, one overrides the other. And this home obviously fits in the getting it to really special category. And really interesting with the client Alan, that his such diverse background meant that he has a very strong handle on style and design, and being able to work with with a client that does that and carries it forward with you and plays is. I heard the other day, the risk tolerance of a client, and I thought that was a really, towards design, and I thought that was a really lovely term to use. What's their risk tolerance to exploration, to going on an adventure? And I think it doesn't matter what you it does matter what you distill from it, but the adventure and the journey gets you to where you can come back and edit it to what needs to be left behind at the end of the day. And again, I think obviously it's part of
and knowing, I say,
your
how
knowledge.
to read. Sure, and I think that it's you're developing a professional, creative relationship, obviously, with the client, and you have to know, kind of the what's the playing field that you're working within, and reading a room. But I strongly believe, very strongly believe, that every client wants to be involved in having some kind of creative endeavor and bringing something to the table. And I've had so many clients, oh, I don't have a creative bone in my body or whatnot. And I think that a lot of people, perhaps unfortunately, but they haven't really been able to be in those environments and those situations. And so part of our role is to sort of help to build that, again, that process, that communication of, helping to teach them. Like they might not, I don't need to be teaching every potential in the future. Well, here are these urban architectural typologies, and what do you think of those? But I do think that, I give a lot of examples to clients. Sometimes I give analogies like a meal or I think we've spoken before about if I wasn't an architect, I'd love to be a film director. And someone one time said, well, that's so different. I said, no, no, no. A movie director and an architect, you're creating a series of visual experiences to elicit emotions.
Yeah.
And those are the sort of things that I'll talk to a client about. And I'll say, oh, here's something else as you move through your house. You think about what do you see, like you're the cinematographer or the director, what is, as you turn the corner, what do you experience? Because ultimately, you see something, and that's the first, for most people, that's the first interaction you have with your environment is what do you see? But also, I think that right split second after that, even more powerful is, what do you feel? What do you feel in those spaces? And at certain points, people say, okay. Well, how big is it? What's the budget? And you have to know like how much archetype to kind of give to clients. But I do think that people do enjoy that. And it does not only, I'm not here to be the court jester and to entertain them. I mean, if they want, but I think that having the ability to sort of find the communication style or find the little anecdotes that can help people as clients to kind of really give me a better insight as to who they are so I can find like what's the essence of this, what's the soul of the house going to be that is for them. It's not what I think like what it should be, but like a very good artist will paint, even a photographer, but even especially like a oil painting, a portrait artist, they can look at someone, and if you know that person, it might not look literally like them. That's not the point, but it's like it captures their spirit, and it's like this magic. Like why is it that this oil on this canvas really connects his personality? Like you look at this, and you feel like you know their story, or something that's unique about them. And now a house is different from a piece of art. I'm not pretending that it's just like this portrait that needs to be literal or something, but there are moments within every house that you can do something to make it, sort of have a spirit above and beyond, again, I keep going back to just the functional.
Yeah.
And that's part of, each person is different and there's no one formula, but I think that it's a good goal to have, and to what extent you aim high.
Yes.
And then you try to find something that is, again, that adds those layers of meaning. And then the other reality, though, is that the ultimate character of the house is the experiences over the years. People have experiences. They'll be with their friends or family. They'll have parties. They'll have special occasions, happiness and sometimes not happy. But that really becomes the layers, their memory and memories in those spaces. But but you want to have something that is really conducive to having that, those life experiences happen. And then of course that adds a lot of the meanings for the people. But again, that's one of the things that we really love in what we do. As I mentioned, getting to work with people, there's There's an architect years ago that said, "Oh, you're going to do residential work, huh? You're going to have to work with people." And we're thinking, like, dude, you know,
That's what we want to
good
do.
thing that you're not designing houses, because if you're looking at people like you have to work with them, this is evil. And I really do think it's such a honor and such a inspiration having different clients and trying to kind of see what's special about each of these people that we get to work with.
Yeah. Yeah. I
So,
totally.
including the client on the Valburn house.
Yeah. Well, so let's go from that. Let's segue from there to the Valburn house, and I'll put up some pictures. Um, because this is the second time that we actually ended up recording, because our first recording, the actual technical side of it flopped. Yeah. I have the pictures all sitting in my computer in a line. And so let's go through. And I think that thing of capturing the spirit is so important in the sense of what you did and what you have done. And in doing that, we've got the house that we have here, the Valburn house. And also, with the backstory that you just gave us of your client, Alan, is, this amazing story of who he is. And so now people can start to envisage him and his backstory against what you've created here. And they can do it like 100 times more when they walk through the door. So, Hugh, can you see that picture that I've got up now?
I can, yeah. So this
Cool.
is, there's a few things that I can look at this picture, and it's always great seeing the house done or seeing pictures, because then you look at it and you realize, okay, you've had the story in your head. You've seen the drawings, the sketches, the construction site, the computer models, and then when it's done and you get some distance from it, you start to realize, okay, it might be all these things that were your specific goals. And then other times, I start to see things, okay, you know. And one thing I notice here is that you can't tell from this picture, but it's on a steep site. Mm-hmm. And so what you're looking at is it's a one-story house from the street. In fact, the peak of that roof, the vaulted, the pitched roof there, is only like 2 inches below the Austin height limit. And that's because on the back side of the house, because it's a steep drop off on the hillside, it's really tall, but no one sees it. So we wanted it to be very quiet, very unassuming from the street. Some of the neighboring homes are much more, they're like the late 90s, early 2000s, very large, houses.
Big houses, imposing structures.
Yeah, imposing on the land. And so here we wanted to be this very calm house. But one thing that you can notice is you look through, the front door in this image is open. And then you see the window to its right, but you get to see the hillside. You get to see the horizon moving through. And so we wanted to give these little edited glimpses of like the view, and then even the walkway coming from the street, which isn't seen in this image, but you approach it from this particular angle. And this sounds maybe a little bit, I don't know, pompous or whatever, but the Parthenon, if you ever visit the Acropolis, they have it set up where the propylae, the like little entry building gate.
Yep.
And the ancient one, not like any tourist gate, it's set so you get to see the building at a certain angle, like a 30-60 sort of angle. So it's a very pleasing angle to see, the house, as opposed to looking straight shot like a Roman temple. You'd look straight on, very kind of rigid, but that represented their culture, right? But being able to see through, because I was talking about how Alan was a very big inspiration and whatnot, with a lot of his goals and typologies and so forth. But the site, every project, the site is, and there is sometimes it's the physical, like a slope. Other times it's the cultural. Like if you're in Santa Fe, New Mexico, the site is based on a cultural, tan stucco and whatnot. But also there's a word, a French word, terroir. And the terroir is, about the soil, the actual physical land, and how it influences the grape and the taste of the grape. And it's coming from the earth, like literally. Now, that doesn't have a direct influence here, but I think that it gives that spirit. There's other phrases like genus loci and so forth, and all these different, all these different foreign words really to describe, how is a house appropriate for this particular spot. And in this particular case, as you walk through, this starts to go to the choreography of kind of how you experience the house as you move through it. And, the view is very amazing. The client actually looked at a few different properties and one had a really amazing view, but it's facing due west. And anyone in Texas knowing that you have a view facing west, anytime from like, depending on the season, but the afternoon sun is such a low angle and it's very harsh. And so it's not good to have a view. And so he had the wisdom to know, like, okay, this is a really cool piece of property, but he found this one and it faces north. And so having a really beautiful view facing north, you have all the afternoon light hitting the hills, but you're not having the afternoon sun coming right in to you. And also then the front side faces south. And so having the play of light and shadow was good. And that's real quickly. The other, one of the signature features of the front of the house is this brick pattern.
Yeah.
And as far as the process goes, he originally came to us wanting kind of a brownish red brick, like you would see like in London or in New York and places. Yeah. And all the brick we started to look at was really just a new sort of fake version of that. And also a lot of the neighboring homes, like from the 90s and 2000s, were like red brick or brown brick. And we thought, not sure about it, but we were still planning to do that. We were at the brick showroom trying to find which was the best of the different shades, like of the brown or the reds. And they were all maybe a solid B plus at best. And then the client looked over as he was listening to the salesperson and saw this product. It's actually a concrete module. And he liked it actually because of the shape. They're long, skinny brick. And he asked, "Oh, do you have this in brown or red?" And they had some versions, not of those colors, but then he started warming up to it. And so this is a great example of how he was very open. He had a set of goals that we respected, but then we all started to think, like, you know what? This house, we wanted to be calm. We wanted to be quiet. We didn't want it to kind of look like a bad version of the neighboring homes and so forth, kind of neutral and clean. And so then ultimately he not only went with this long, skinny brick, but he thought, you know what? Having the gray is nice. It's neutral. And then let's let this pattern is something else that he kind of warmed up to. At first he said, well, I don't know, this like fish scales. And I said, well, Alan, what we can do is this pattern will change during the day. It's like a sundial. So as the sun moves in this particular house, it moves from the right to the left. And so the shadow keeps on changing and, and so forth. And so he's very open to it. And so I really like.
Sorry, I was just going to say, it brings lots of energy to the shape of the house because it's kept fairly back the shape, and then all of a sudden we've got the light playing, so the house keeps changing all day long because it's facing south, so it's collecting all that sunlight, and it
also makes it, I think, and it makes it friendlier since it is. There is a window to the left of this particular image here that is in the front, but otherwise it is a very kind of quiet house. And I feel that if it didn't have the brick pattern, it would have looked a little bit too cold and sort of like, don't come knock on my door. So we wanted to have something that kind of gave something back to the public.
Yeah, I think it really does. And I think the gray just sets it down because of the amount of sky that you get as well. It just sets it down into its landscape. Mm-hmm. Whereas if that was a big color, it would be standing up. And you'd be seeing it, if it was red or whatever, it would stop you.
Yeah.
As opposed to letting it just blend through. It's beautiful front facade, and the weight as well as all the narrow lines and just the kind of the precision of it, and the fact that there's no real overhangs other than around the porch. It just creates a real juxtaposition with the entry. This one takes us inside.
Thank my associate project manager. Yeah.
Oh, right. Sorry, you were going to thank your project manager.
I was just going to say, thanking Michael Gamble, one of my associates in the office, and we said very precise. He had to draw every brick, especially because we chose this material during construction. So that meant that we had to kind of work with the sizes of where the windows were and the height and all these little details. That go on and on about it. But I think that it does take a lot of work to kind of make something perhaps seem effortless and neutral. But then when you walk in, this is what you begin to see.
Yeah.
And the angle of the view is, kind of looking towards all the green hills, obviously. This room, I think, is the one that feels the most like a urban penthouse apartment. Mm-hmm. Because it's a steep site, you can't walk out to the backyard because it's, 15 feet or so lower than this floor, at least, and whatnot. So the outdoor space is that big terrace, which in this photo you are hopefully you don't really see very actively, but the balcony is already lower. There's a few steps out of this image. So you walk down, and then rather than having a guardrail, we chose to have more or less of a solid wall and clad in green tile. And right beyond the windows, you can kind of see a faint green band.
Yeah.
And but that was meant to be, well, you color it green, it's going to blend into the hillside.
It allows your eye to travel all the way out there, and then also the fact that your windows are below the floor line, and then the looks like the
Right.
handrails exactly on the floor line of the house as well, and so that
Hmm.
kind of just allows your eye to keep falling forward. As you said, if you wanted to think of an apartment, this could really have that a feel of being elevated up in the sky, and the fact that you're attached to the ground right out the back door behind, or the front door behind you. This gives you that floating feeling of you're above your landscape. I think it's lovely. Tell me, with the things like, the windows and the columns. Obviously, the columns are structural, but the columns, and then I see out on the side there, we've got, the arched window as well. Where was that
Yeah.
in the design
So
aesthetic?
yeah, so that is a primary suite, and it's connected to the house. It's not like it's a separate
Hmm.
villa or compound, but we chose to articulate it so it felt like it's very sheltered,
Hmm.
protected. I think that for most people, you want to walk in, and this is a very active space. You mentioned like the frame of the windows and the wood floor below the floor, these little things to make you feel really connected, to the outside, to the view. But yet, for most folks, if you're in the bedroom, you wanted to feel a little, I guess,
Mm,
architectural term, cozy.
yeah,
You wanted to feel a little more
intimate.
sheltered and protected,
Yeah.
intimate, and so forth. And so also to give it more of a sort of a domestic feel. And so looking at that, and I think it might be another image or two of it, but the arched window makes it feel like it's very,
I'm thinking it's the next
oh no,
image.
almost like an Italian, like it's
Yeah,
a little building in Tuscany, almost like in this. There you go,
yeah,
and having it be almost like a child's drawing of a house, just the most basic. How do you pare something down where it kind of still isn't so abstract that this is not a minimalist house,
mm,
but we also didn't want it to be an overly Disney version, stage set version of traditional architecture. And so that was the reasoning for that, having the arch, and it lines up with the primary bed, the
yeah,
bed in their room. The other is using the tile, the same tile that's on that guardrail, we use as sort of a connecting piece. And so you can see just to the left of the brick, gabled element with the arch, again, having that same tile. So it almost feels like it might have been like this is sort of a narrative, perhaps, is that that building maybe was this independent little building that you then connected to the house. And
yeah,
so you really feel like you're not walking many steps from the kitchen, but you feel like you are very like in your whole nother zone. It's your private retreat away from the rest of the house.
yeah, yeah, for sure. And what's below it? Like below the bedroom, we can kind of see into the next
Yeah.
level down.
Yeah, below it is the exercise room,
Uh-huh.
what could be a spare bedroom, but there we wanted to have a lot of openness to the greenery down below and so forth. And we felt that it was again almost as if you took this kind of Italian, tall masonry,
Hmm.
chapel or
Tower.
stone
Yeah,
barn or something, and then you came back as a modern architect and kind of sliced, big corner window to kind of really open it up. And it wasn't done just so it would look like it was a renovated old building, but the program for upstairs, you wanted to be more secluded, more sheltered. And downstairs, you wanted to be more open, more active. If you're on your,
yeah,
your
yeah.
fitness bike or whatever, you kind of feel like you're, out into the greenery of the woods down
Mm,
below.
mm. Yeah, again, that thing of meeting an emotional outcome of what the transitioning through the building will give you and what each space is used for. This one here, amazing fireplace. Uh, and, again, this is obviously well positioned so the view is down on our left-hand side and wrapping through the corner. Um, Tell me about creating this fireplace, and then also the piano. The the library kind of area over on the side.
Yeah, so this is one big space. The ceilings are 11 and a half foot tall. And of course, on the left-hand side, and to a certain extent behind the fireplace, floor to ceiling windows, where you really feel very connected to the outside and, you know, um, hopefully more dynamic, exhilarating, perhaps.
Hmm.
And so what this space is all about is when you have one big, large room, how you define these different zones rather than it feeling like, okay, well, you just plop a piano or put some furniture in the middle of one big cavernous space, right? And so here, what we did is the fireplace, we wanted it to be very solid, have a lot of gravity to it, and feel very almost, primal or something in terms of its visual weight and a physical weight too. So it is concrete. The other thing that we like is that it has the imperfections. This concrete is not like a Tadao Ando concrete. It's not like the Kimball or you know
Yeah.
other things, Lucan concrete. We like the fact that it had these little, and you can kind of make out of these photos, a little bit of imperfections, some of the
Yeah.
pock marks and so forth. It's all very durable. It's not going to crumble, but we like that it had this sort of unexpected, spontaneous sort of like, what's it going to be? You pour the concrete and you take off the formwork, and you have some control over it, but there's a certain amount of surprise that you're going to have with it. But it, for me, tells that story of how it's made, but also it gives that kind of more texture
A little bit more
because the
primal.
ceiling is, yeah, and it's meant to be a little more rugged, I suppose, kind of like the concrete columns. You can see the shadows, how they kind of play off of these little vertical,
Yeah.
stripes and the texture of the
Yeah.
concrete.
As
So
the
finding a
light
balance
comes through.
between, yeah, and then the to the right, so he has a piano. I think he's had that all his life, if I'm not mistaken. But to the right of the piano is where the dining table is, which is all again this one big open space. But then the bookshelves and the use of wood.
Hmm.
They quite often clients will say like, I want something to warm up the space. And sometimes architects are a little bit like, okay, my client they made me warm up the space, in some way. But I think that's a very valid thing is how do you found a counterbalance, to the floor to ceiling windows and the concrete and everything else. And so wood is something that I think people can really, it's a wonderful material to help
Mm.
set a mood and make it feel more defined. And the other thing is, maybe even more important than the wood is what he ends up putting on the shelves. He wanted them to be, some of them are angled, so you have these books. So rather than just looking at the spine of the book, you get to see the whole, dust cover, the whole jacket of the
Mm.
book, or you get to see the horizontal shelves higher up. And so again, what's nice is that, I mean, obviously you pick up one thing and you move it and you change it out over time. There could be photographs and frames, there could be any number of things, but it allows if you really want to make something kind of feel, warm and interesting, then put things that are meaningful to you.
Yeah.
And so, what do you put on the shelves? It sounds very simplistic, right? But I think creating a spot where it's not totally random, you give some order to it, especially if you want, and a client wants a house to be very, ordered and calm and architectural, but allowing them to have this sort of system. Basically, you call it display shelves,
Hmm.
but putting it also like if you're having that near the dining room, it's really nice. If you're a dinner guest, you get to kind of really your eye gets to kind of really study some of these things and give some visual interest, um, as opposed to looking at a blank wall.
I think it really
You
happens
know,
here. It holds two rooms out of the bigger space, and also creates that visual interest and storytelling. It's storytelling of your client's story. Um, this photo here, we've got the staircase, and I know that because I've seen all these photos that there's more about the staircase. So let's start with here, and then I love the way the light spills through this. I love sort of the formality of it as well, in
mhm.
the cleaned up setting. And then we'll go to that next photo, I'm pretty sure, which will be the one.
Yeah. So this is the view if you're walking from this large garage, and he is somebody who parks in his garage every day. We always like to think of, okay, well, you can have this wonderful front door and you have this cool choreography where you're walking in from the front yard and you're seeing the view and it's all very, choreographed and prescribed. We also want to have their day-to-day experience be as nice in its own way, especially if you're having a garage underneath your living space. And if you have to, well, not have to, but if the reality is you're parking downstairs and you have to walk up the staircase to get to your bedroom, to your kitchen, all your basically most of the house is above here. And so, how is it that it is a graceful, enjoyable pathway to go from, where you enter your own house to get to the rest of the space that you spend all your time? And so we wanted it to be something that was just first and foremost, had some grace, had some beauty,
Elegance. Yeah.
natural light. Yeah, natural light is every project we could have. We're very eclectic in what the houses look like, but one key theme is natural light, natural light, natural light. The other here was again the use of wood, but also having the subtle curves. If you look at the floor, you can see on the baseboard has a curve and the plaster is curved. And then the last couple of steps, and this is done during construction, they already framed the staircase coming straight down. And I thought, oh, it's easier to add on, I guess, than to tear off and redo the staircase. But what we did is the bottom three steps. We thought, no, this is a staircase that needs to spill and spread out like these classic staircases without looking like it was from a plantation home or looking like it was trying to be like the Paris Opera House or, some big grand, bourgeois kind of staircase.
Just subtly.
Trying to make it subtle. Yeah. And then even the guardrail, that little curve on the top, cap of the guardrail where these little details that were meant to sort of be a counterbalance to the rectilinear nature of a lot of the rest of the house. So again, putting a curve, here or there, judiciously, right? But where do you have, if you're going to have a curve to kind of give a little bit of character and interest, I think having those curves be, put to good use. And so that was the story here. But you can also, from this lower level, there's another level about 3 feet lower. See, we're on the steep hillside. So the rest of the
This
home,
one.
because mostly there you go.
Yeah.
And so having this, and so again, you can see where the base of the staircase that comes in from the garage level is, but then you could also turn down and walk down these extra steps and to get to that fitness room underneath the bedroom, and his office and another bedroom are down this lower level. And so again, rather than having it, we wanted the terrazzo was used, and then these steps also kind of spread out, and then it turns into a bench. That last feature to the left is a bench there. So really making it where it there's a certain amount of being dramatic, but also it's just a nice, easy way to flow. If you're walking down the staircase, you can just kind of move in your own pathway, so to speak.
Yeah. Yeah, you can come and go from the space with space around you, as you say, like you can approach from different angles. You're not so prescribed. And then the plays of the floor, the terrazzo, and then up into the timber, it's kind of warming and transitioning you as you go out through the space. It's very pretty. Here we have you alluded to the fact that on the left of the first photo we showed, there was this window. So when you're looking at the house from the street, and you also said at the very start about the fact that the way you were brought in was quite deliberate. So you're brought in over on this left-hand side and you transition to the right-hand side, which also helps line up as you're taking your experience of your views of the house. I love the use when you can drop down and lift up like this with stairs, that it pauses people at different pieces because they're watching where their feet go. And as they're transitioning, they're going through different motions that shift them perceptually as they're arriving. And you've given like these platforms of pause on the way into the home. And with that whole light play across the front of the house, I can see what you mean, like how it shifts and changes. It's a pretty photo when you've got the lights on as well. Very pretty.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I look at this picture and I kind of, how warm the light is, inside and so forth. It reminds me sort of a scene, not from any particular movie, but this whole sense of how cinematic it sort of feels. But it also makes me think, like if I was getting out of the car, my wife and I had parked and then we're carrying the bottle of wine or something, it really feels like the sense of visiting somebody and being able to kind of, enjoy a social, evening and
Yeah.
whatnot. It seems like it's very warm, very inviting, I guess, and
Mm.
even having those two benches in that kind of intermediary landing in the front, but just having it, um, again, wanting it to, on one hand, be more, minimal and, unique looking and compared to the other homes, but also, key to being, and the client also wanted this. He wanted, at one point, we said, well, would you want just a flat roof? Because we have this height limit, and you could have your ceiling could be a little bit higher, if you just had a flat roof all the way across, like maybe some house you see maybe in
Yeah.
Malibu or somewhere where, it's just very simple and very, and those houses quite often, though, feel like, don't even bother knocking. They
Yeah.
don't feel very inviting. And so that little gesture, of having that kind of pitched roof, the gabled roof there, to me, and this is the goal of the client, was he wanted it to really feel inviting, very neighborly, within its own terms, of course.
Yes.
And so this picture for me really captures that essence of being a, friendly house and a welcoming home.
Yeah, absolutely. And like the piece out the back with the arch window in it, it's like a play on that as well, where it feels like a house that we have always all understood, that it's got this pitched roof on it, that it's the naivety of that simplicity that actually tells us this story back in our head of that's what we first drew when we drew a house. We drew this box with
Yeah,
a
and
with a
I'm not
pitch
gonna say
on it.
it's
Yeah.
universal, but
Yeah.
yes,
It's
yeah.
got lovely feel to it, eh? Like it's really lovely. The
It also,
this piece over here where we've got this big long window, it's obviously dropping below the floor grade as we're going through. So is that our staircase that's taking us to the lower floor?
actually, no, that the staircase is more towards the back, but
Uh-huh.
it is the intention was to make it seem like it was just one big tall window. And so
Mm-hmm.
the kind of, I'm not sure the trick, but having it look like it's a one-story house. And so rather than having a window, the lower window is a window down to the garage.
Oh, right.
And so we wanted it to be, we didn't want to have a window in the guest bedroom and then a little bit of brick and then some other little random window that was below. So there's different buildings that I've seen over time. I know Jefferson's Monticello is a three-story house, but he designed it to try to look like it's one story because he didn't
Uh-huh.
want it to look too palatial and too grand or something, and whatnot. But I think using scale and using simplicity. The other was we wanted the front to be just very calm and very, very, very pared down. And so we thought, okay, well, we'll have the front door and some glass near it, and then the corner window that goes to the dining and living space. And then we didn't want to have two more windows because we like kind of the just abstract simplicity. And so having, even though it's not one window, but
Yeah.
having it feel like it was
It
one
appears
window
to
in
be
that
one window.
portion of the
Yeah.
home.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that was the trick. But also, we wanted natural light into the garage. And so
Uh-huh.
that's the southern face. And so you get some nice light coming down into the garage. So there's more than one reason for it. It wasn't simply the abstract proportions and so forth. But again, that function instigates something.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think, like this journey that you've just taken us through of, how the house, the brief for the house, and then how you've responded to it. But like taking those first moments as we turn up on tour, taking those first moments of pause to really look at the landscape around it and how the house is sitting in the landscape, and then be drawn into the discovery of the adventure of the home by taking your pause. I imagine the AIA will be set up maybe on that first gravel courtyard piece or just back. I don't know. The
Probably
stairs will be covered
so.
in people's
Depends on,
shoes. Yeah.
yeah. But no, I think what you mentioned journey, and I think that's something that we had chatted about briefly earlier was the whole process. I like to do a lot of analogies, to food, to music. I get
Yeah.
very inspired by the structure of even like pop music and whatnot, and but also the sequencing of things, right? But the process of how do you get and work with a client, not how do you get a commission, but how do you work with a client to sort of allow for that sort of serendipity. And one thing that when we chatted was a road trip. When you have like my son and I are getting ready to leave, drive back to LA and driving, and we have certain stops we're going to go to. But if you've ever been on a road trip, sometimes it's the unexpected things that are, every now and then a flat tire there, and there's certain things that are unexpected that are bad, but no, having those things, sometimes the most fun comes from something that is unexpected,
Yeah.
and how do you kind of provide a structure? Or recently, I think I may have mentioned, went down to visit SpaceX.
Yeah.
And a friend of mine is a pilot, and so it was an air trip, right? So we flew down there, and it turned out that one day they were closed because they were like doing some cordoned off testing, and so like, okay. And then we flew somewhere else and ended up having a great time. But and there's everyone has their own I'm sure, and hopefully everyone has their own stories about when certain surprises turned out to be most fun.
Yeah.
And or the most, how do you kind of work with that? And so one thing that we're always very intrigued by is, how do we create a dialogue, communication with a client, and a process with a contractor as well, to say, okay, here are the main anchors of this project. Here's how big it's going to be, here's and so forth. But then say, what? Sometimes a challenge is when you have like a steep site, or if you have something happening. Those are the things that prompt us, at least, to be more creative. And in those creative solutions, at first, you're like, oh, this tree is in the way. It's like, well, no, the tree is going to mean that your house is going to be wrapping around it, and that's going to create a design that is way more interesting than we would have ever come up with if it was just an empty, flat, rectangular lot. Then you'd be more conventional. So we love these opportunities where it seems like it's a problem, like, oh, we can't go to SpaceX today, or whatever these stories are. But we always like to kind of say, after we get over our frustration with being challenged, is, okay, what opportunity is here, and how might that force the creative juices to solve something in a way that is appropriate and solves the function, but also adds that extra sort of layer. You mentioned last time we chatted, the je ne sais quoi.
Yeah.
How do you get something, and in a sincere way, and not as a way of just excusing, these
no, in a
problems,
sincere way. I think you come back to that thing that you say, which is, or then what? And so you've got the challenge.
Right,
so, or then
right.
what becomes the best of what we do here? I think when, this home, there's lots of points when you're on the tour. And if you're not going on the tour, obviously you can see it here in photographs. But if you're on the tour, there's lots of points to pause and all the rest. And depending on the time of the day that you visit this home will depend on the light play you get off the front facade of the home. And that's going to be, again, one of those things where you may, if it's on your route to somewhere, by nature of where you live in Austin or where you're traveling from, this would be worth stopping past several times, whether you go in each time, but just being on this route so that you see the different light plays on the front, because the house is going to present itself differently at different times of the day so nicely. And it's, I think that would be a really interesting part of it. I'm so looking forward to seeing it and feeling the emotions in it. Thanks, Hugh. I think it's brilliant, and looking forward to seeing it on the tour.
Yeah. And I'll be there all weekend, both days. So
absolutely,
say hello and stop by. Yeah.
Cool, man. So I hope you've really enjoyed that. And if you'd like to stick around for about another 5 or 10 minutes, you can hear what Rob Gomez, the photographer who took the photos of all these homes, has to say about this particular home. And he's joined by Ingrid Spencer, the director of the AIA Austin, and their comments are really fascinating, how they viewed these homes, much like the public would. Anyway, hope you've enjoyed. Take care. Hugh and I go a long way back. I think he was one of the first architects I ever met in Austin, and just enjoy his amazing mind of how he thinks about putting things together. It's always unexpected. It's always something that is a twist, and it's got more dimension than you ever imagine. So Valburn, Ingrid, tell us, I can see why it was on the tour. Tell us all the other reasons it was on the tour, or is on the tour.
It's a knockout house, this Valburn project. I mean, look at this facade. Look at that brickwork. It's just like amazing. So the way that this sits on the street in the neighborhood, it's just not like anything I've ever seen, but still there's something kind of welcoming about it, but also it says not welcoming. I don't even know what to say about it. It's a lot of this house is about the client, which I love because I feel like as much as this tour is about houses and architects and neighborhoods, it's also about relationships between designers and the homeowner. And this one, like this homeowner was a designer. I think he's a graphic designer and from New York, came to Austin, had a lot of ideas about what he wanted. And this property is a very difficult property to put a house on. It's a steep slope in the back, so there's no backyard because it's just like hanging on the side. And it's just so cool. It's a big house. There's like an 8-car garage. I think this homeowner collects vehicles. But it's also a house for a family, and there's kids in here. And I think Rob has some pictures of the kids' space, but it's a very much a contrast to the more traditional homes in this neighborhood. But it's a quiet, simple space on the street. And gosh, what else can I say? There's beautiful views in the back once you're inside. Gorgeous light.
Yeah.
Um,
I love this facade where the facade has got so much simple detail interest, but also, like you said, it says I'm private, I'm strong, I'm modern, but I'm traditional, and yeah, you may be invited in. There's plenty of space for you to come up to the front door. We'll see. We'll meet you there.
yeah.
I can imagine as a tour, all the people coming up these stairs, and I would be saying, stand well back at some point and get this view that Rob's showing us here as well. Like this view of the broadness of the entry as it narrows down to the glass piece where it's like, oh, we'll give you a little glimpse of the inside of our life. We'll let you, we'll just give you a little look in. Yeah. Rob,
and
oh, sorry.
Oh, I'm so sorry. One more thing, we're kind of used to having limestone on the outside of a home, but this is a very different take on a brick facade. And I think Hugh said that the owner had inspiration from lofts in New York and alleys and kind of that New York City thing. So it's like bringing a bit of New York into Austin, and then the take on that. So that's another interesting piece.
Yeah, look, the fact of the way that they've played with stacking the brick and then also expressing it in lines that actually guide you towards the front door area as well, so that the light falls in from both sides, and one's a panel and then the other's the building. Yeah, there's Hugh written all over it.
Yeah.
And obviously a client who really appreciated that enjoyment and fun and that whimsical part of design that gets added. Yeah. So Rob, tell us, was it fun to photograph this one?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this was a super fun sort of a little bit to touch on what Ingrid was saying, where as soon as I got out of my car, even though I had seen it during the site tours, it's such I guess hard to describe, like within the neighborhood, and because you're up kind of high up in Austin, where it's so stunning and different than anything that's really around it, but at the same time, like very elegant, understated way. It's not super like showy, like, in an obnoxious way. It's just so, I don't know. It's just like the brickwork. It's such a like impeccable sort of crafted design in that way that it just draws you in. It's impossible not to, kind of stare at it if you're walking by. And this particular shot was just a fun way to show a little bit of, as you were saying, kind of invite you in and see see through the house at the view a little bit as well, and kind of open it up in that way to the next shot here, which is just kind of what I would
Oh my God.
say is like the most,
Yeah.
the space in this house, I would say the most sort of like special, the obvious shot, but at the same time, it shows like the grandeur, the like scale of it.
Yeah.
I mean, are we in a New York loft, or are we in Rome? Where are we?
I know. I don't know why in the best way, but it kept just reminding me of like a Bond villain house, just like on the top of a hill, just with those
Totally.
columns and the view.
Isn't that so true? This house, you so far, just with those two views you've shown us, you could imagine this in any movie where it got edgy, and it was like, and you go, oh, okay, you can see it. It's it's got something, again, Hugh's genius written all over it.
It's beautiful.
It's so cool.
And then the last one is just kind of a one that I picked because this was a fun sort of, we're talking about Hugh so much because of obvious reasons, but this really showed me from meeting him there kind of a lot about, what he likes, how he thinks. This is like a little bit of a secret spot, I guess you would say, in the house. It's not where you would think. I mean, this is like a view from a little slit in the wall, like about that wide, that's in a little den TV room. So he just kind of showed me this, like, oh, I got this shot with my iPhone, if you want to, try to get it again. And it was this little kind of magical space within the house that it would be hard to, or easy to miss, I guess, if you don't know about it and kind of check it out. But I would recommend just popping in, trying to find it there. And it just, again, shows me the intentionality with everything that Hugh does and how he thinks about a space and how the light will play with that space and within that space. And this was just one of many little fun moments like that in the house.
I can see that. and again, that the way Hugh thinks, and then compiles his thoughts into architecture is always going to take you on some kind of journey, and you'll find the unexpected even if you don't look for it, you'll find the unexpected. When you start looking for it, you'll find even more of it.
That's true.
It is like the previous photo with those columns that are there, that are holding up, and you just look at the soft fluting around them, and the way they're finished to the floor. Again, so deliberate, Yeah. It's great.
And I love that arched window that you can see there.
And the way it's keyed as it goes around, so that it actually gets another dimension in it as well, around the top of the arch.
Do you remember right outside of this space, there's a sunken, I don't know what.
Yeah, so the green tile that you see there is like it was not finished when I shot it, so we were trying to avoid certain angles. But I believe that's going to be some sort of courtyard area,
garden. Yeah.
Garden, yeah, maybe like some sitting area. I had heard someone say a pool. I don't know. It seemed pretty narrow for that. I don't know who I heard say that. Maybe I got it wrong, but I don't think so. But yeah, there's the definite door to get out there and everything, and so it's it will be a very cool space once that's finished.
And the only way you'll know what it is by coming on tour.
There you go.
Come on tour and actually see this piece and feel it and experience it. It's beautiful, really beautiful. Let's go from that home. How cool Hugh's done there. I love it. Thank you for tuning into our conversation. I hope it left you both informed and inspired. Don't forget to subscribe wherever you listen. And please don't hesitate to share your design thoughts with me. It's always a joy to hear from you. If you're like me and crave a deeper dive into design thinking, coupled with a love for travel and adventure, consider one of my architectural adventures. Join me and some of my wonderful design friends and embark on a journey of a lifetime. Apply for an unforgettable design experience at adrianramsey.com. With our clients spanning the globe, I firmly believe behind every great project are great people. If you're a great person and seeking to turn your dream into a reality, I'd be honored to design your home with you. Why not join the ranks of our exceptional clients and let's make your heart sing? Reach out to me at studio@ardesignhouse.com. That's studio@ardesignhouse.com, and let's get a conversation going and make your heart sing.